Welcome everybody. Blessed are those that visit this channel and enjoy the content here.
Since everyone knows, it's even something that modern fans never shut the fuck up about. The fact that obviously MIBR did win ESWC, which was considered like an unofficial major back in 1.6. Yep. What people maybe don't know, BIT, is the next year's ESWC, when it was you in the lineup, you guys had in the semi-finals, if people remember, that was the one where the famous final was the Poles of NEO and TaZ against NOA, the Zonic and Ave and those guys. And famously, it's the one where actually the Poles won fairly easily in the final. Like, right? But people don't know, in the semi-final, you guys had an amazing match against NOA, Zonic and those guys. It was really close. And if people remember what I just talked about earlier, in the final of the SHG tournament earlier in the year, you already beat Pentagram. So I always wondered, mate, like, I don't think people remember, there was a real chance to win another ESWC. Like, this could have happened, right? If people don't remember, if anyone wants to go back and watch this game, it's an amazing semi-final. It's a really good game.
Yeah, it was crazy because back then we kind of like, we had a very good advantage against PGS, which was like NEO and TaZ. And then we always lose to Fnatic, and Fnatic always beat us. Right. So it was kind of like a triangle, you know. So yeah, when we lost to NOA, we were like very sad. Even nowadays, this is the game I remember the most. If you talk about my career, this is the game I remember the most. Like, this is the biggest defeat of my career for sure. Because I remember we always say, okay, if we beat these guys, we're gonna be champion again for sure. Because we had a very good confidence against PGS back then. And I remember this game we lost 16-14. I remember on Inferno, Zonic, we planted on A on Inferno, and there was like this crazy after plant. Everyone is throwing nade. Like, it was like 3v3, 4v4 or something like this. And then he just go on the A side and he started defusing the C4.
Right.
And he just like everybody's alive, and then he just bomb has been defused. And we're like, what the fuck is going on? You know? And yeah, this round this is always on my mind because I think we lost Train as well. It was like 16-14 as well or something. It was very two close maps, and also the fact that we lost and we're going to meet PGS on the final was like there was also 1v3 I had on Inferno, which I killed two guys and then I die and I lose. And then on the finals, I was like on the finals watching the NOA against PGS, and NEO had the exactly same.
Oh, right. The famous round he had. Yes, right.
Yeah, and he won, you know. I think he wallbanged the last guy.
Yes.
Yeah. I had a very similar round like this, and I lost. So yeah, people always say, "Oh, the round that BIT lost, but NEO won." You know, yeah. This game is like a nightmare for me because I think we had a very good chance of being back-to-back champion of SWC back then.
Yes. By the way, as you said, bizarrely, your team actually was just unusually good against the Poles, NEO and TaZ. Like, after this, the next tournament, the GameGune, which is also a really stacked event. Even though but if people don't know, this GameGune was probably the best GameGune. It was the one where actually all the real teams went. Whereas other GameGunes, it'd be like, 3 or 4 good teams. At this one, you also beat them. But you 16-2'd them on a map. Like, back then, the other thing about their teams, they were a bit like the Polish Virtus Pro and CSGO. Even if they lose, they're really hard to beat normally. They normally, every game's 16-14 over you guys actually could sometimes just clap them. What do you think was there like a secret to playing this team, or had you figured something out about them?
Yeah, at this point on Nuke, I remember I put like a big numbers. I think there's still like some POV of this match on YouTube.
Oh, is this one of your best maps, right?
Yeah, it was one of the best matches I played, and I don't know. It was. I don't know the reason, to be honest. I think it was just like, okay, we always destroy those guys, but they always destroy Fnatic, and Fnatic always destroy us. Right. I think maybe could be a possibility because we use it to practice a lot against them. Because back in the days we use it to go to Inferno Line, and they use it to go to Inferno Line as well. So we kind of, even though we could practice on the internet back then in Sweden, we use it to practice against them a lot online. We used to be very good friends with them as well. We used to go play soccer with them.
Right.
Yeah, we stay in the same hotel and stuff like this. Yeah, even nowadays when I met TaZ in the tournaments, we always talk, and Kuben as well. So they're very nice guys. But yeah, maybe this is the reason. Maybe, but you never know. We had a lot of, maybe it was like just the style of Counter-Strike. Yeah.
Because right around this time, even though your team was in really good form, and like we say, you're beating the best teams, you're right there close, maybe you can win these big tournaments. For you personally, this had to suck because that was when all the other players just went to Source and CGS, didn't they? Like, all the best on Kogu, all that, they all went, and then you basically had to rebuild MIBR and just do different squads, which, look, we'll get to. You had some success, but in that moment, what even happened there? Like, why didn't you go to CGS? Did you get the offer? Was the whole team offered? Why do you stay? Give me some thoughts on this. It seems like a really crazy thing to happen out of nowhere.
Yeah, back then there was this crazy tournament called CGS, which was like sponsored by a television, Direct TV or something.
It was a big cable channel,
yeah. And because of the television stuff, you had to be 18, and it was just like it was the same as the CPL stuff. You know, you and FNX, you guys are underage. You guys can't play these tournaments because it's gonna be on TV. You cannot play. And yeah, back then, me and FNX, they put us on the line because they saw this as a big opportunity to, it was on TV. Back then there was nothing like this. There was not even streaming. Yeah, and also the salary was insane because we're like making $500 on the MIBR, and they're like offering you
thousands.
3,000.
It was thousands and thousands.
I think back then it was $3,000, which like
that's crazy money, man.
$3,000 in Brazil was like 6,000 reais, which like we're making 1,500, and they're offering you 6,000. So
and also that's even way higher than like all the Europeans and Americans make. That's probably like 2 or 3 times what they make. Yeah, there was a lot of money back then. You couldn't say no basically at the time, right? If you had the chance.
Yeah, it was a lot of money. So yeah, Paulo wanted to go, and then I think I was left alone because at this point FNX was on GTX.
You basically got the GTX players over, right? It was all those, like I said, basically it was the joke is it's the old guys from Game Crashers. You just got FNX back, BTT, Thorin, and then Chucky obviously was in GTX forever. You just got all these players back, right?
Yeah, I think at this time FNX was like, he was kicked from MIBR because he lost a flight because
he didn't turn up to a flight famously. Yes, that was a classic story back in the day.
He was making a tattoo, and we're like, we're going to Korea. We're not going to like Sweden, which like every day there was a different.
Oh, it was for the E-Stars tournament, right, in Korea. Yeah, so I forgot about this.
And and then that's why FNX was on G2X back then.
Right.
And I think what happened was Paulo wanted to buy G2X, and they accepted. I think Gaules accepted to move G2X to MIBR back then because I think G2X had no Intel sponsor anymore, and they had it was very very weird stuff, like if you think back then to G2X moving to MIBR, it was like,
well, as you said, they were the main rivals. That's crazy.
Was never going to happen.
That's like players from Real Madrid go to Barcelona or something. They're supposed to be enemies, right?
Yeah, that's exactly the same. But I think G2S, they had no options because they had no sponsor. They cannot like play and live by playing, And I think what happened was that they had the tournament IMA, and I think Tom don't have visa to go to LA, so they needed one player. They are moving to IBR, and so they had one spot, and they called me to play for them on this tournament. I think it was me, Gaules, Lance, BTT, and I don't know, someone else, and I took this opportunity to play for them, and then I was contracted with MIBR. I think Gaules took the chance to become coach and let me stay with the team. Yeah, that's what happened. And when this tournament finished, Tom had to come back because Tom was probably the best player in Brazil. Without those Kogo, FNX, and stuff like this. So he had to come back to MIBR because he was the best player. And yeah, that's when we had 6 player and someone had to go out, and I think back then Gaules didn't want to cut anybody, and he was the IGL of the team, but yeah, he saw potential of someone else doing the IGL, and yeah, that's what happened. He took the step away and he became the coach of the team. I joined it, and GTRX became MIBR, which was crazy.
By the way, before we go on, let me just ask a question about that, because if people don't know, on my YouTube channel, if you ever go back, I think I started it like in terms of making videos in like 2012 or 11 or something. Like it actually was a long time after I'd done all my other content, because I used to work for websites, obviously. And if you ever go back on my YouTube channel, one of my first interviews actually is with Gaules, which would probably blow people's mind now, be like, what the fuck? Because I'm supposed to be like public enemy #1 of Gaules in Brazil and stuff. But I always tell people, one, there was no big streaming and influencer culture, so none of us were like that back then. But Gaules especially wasn't at all this character he is now. Like, people have to understand, whenever you appear on camera, and especially if you're doing like an entertainment role, there's an aspect which isn't all you. You know, some of it's performance and you exaggerate parts. Like, if I gave an opinion on Twitter bit, I'm not just going to put a totally reasonable, I'm going to make it a bit spicy, you know, I'm going to make it kind of entertaining and people are going to engage with it. Can you give us a thought, right? If I think back then nobody would predict Gaules would be who he is today, like biggest streamer in the universe, like giant personality. He almost has like some weird quality where all like the young people just fucking obsessed with him or something. Who was he back then? Because as far as I remember, mate, he was like a real like hardcore into the game at the time. Like he was really serious, like you're saying about setting up teams. And by the way, I guarantee back then he was super horny to try and beat MIBR and get ahead of those guys. Who was Gaules back then?
Yeah, when I started playing CS, I think it was like 2001. He was already very famous in Brazil, like as a player, you know. But yeah, being famous in Brazil as a player back then was like nothing.
Sure.
You know? You're just like, oh, people are talking about there's this guy Gaules. He's very good, but he plays somewhere else in Brazil.
Right.
But, and the only way you could like get in touch with you, the only way you can like interact with him was like there's no way to interact with him, but you can just like there was a lot of G3X Gaules whenever you join a server to play Counter-Strike. Right. There was always like G3X Gaules.
Oh, people were fake nicking as him, right?
Yeah,
and people don't know. He, aside from obviously FNX, I think this guy Gaules was probably the most iconic G3X player. Like it was kind of his team, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he was always like this. But Gaules, he was always like a very intelligent person, you know. He was always like he was always trying to think ahead of everybody. Like he was not, as a player, he was not like the best individually, but he was a very good IGL. He was a very good leader, you know. He was doing every, like I said about Betushina in GC, he was doing everything to make this team work. Gaules was the same in G3X. He was like, he could do whatever it takes to make G3X win the tournament, you know. But yeah, back in the days, he was very smart, and then he took the chance to become a coach, and he was probably one of the first coaches in Brazil, because back then we had a chance to be coached by we had Veslan at some point.
Oh right, the old Swedish player, right? Okay.
Yeah, when we won SAG in Denmark, Veslan was the coach of the team.
Right.
He was behind us. Yeah. We had like maybe some coaches, but we never had the experience of being the real coach, you know, like traveling with the team, staying behind, making the strats, and having like playbooks, having like anti-strats and stuff like this. It was something new that he brought to the game, you know. And when he left G3X and let me play instead of him, he became probably the first coach in Brazil, you know. So, and then he created his own project on Seleção Brasileira, which was like another like broadcast stuff. He was like always thinking one step ahead of.
Right.
Doesn't matter if it's like gaming or broadcast or coach. He was like always trying to create something new. You know, he's a very very intelligent people. You know.
Right, being as I set up that story where the other players went to CGS and then you got basically the G3X players into your lineup, I now want to talk about a tournament that in history, look, this wasn't a major, it was Dreamhack Winter in 2007, but I think this is the most underrated Tier 1 LAN win ever bit. Because if someone in history looks on Wikipedia, they're going to see MIBR wins, but they're going to think it's Kogu and FNX and all the famous. They don't remember, this is the lineup that aren't the famous players. And by the way, at this tournament, not only did you guys beat all the European teams, like you beat Lurpus's Rock Hat team and the Emulate team that won World Cyber Games and SK Gaming. This is in Sweden, remember? But you didn't even lose a game. You guys just went through the whole upper bracket. And remember, this is like in the heart of Sweden, Dreamhack, bloody with all the thousands of little fans and everyone's a big Forest fanboy and Zet fanboy and stuff. This must have been an awesome fucking tournament, mate. This sounds like the sort of event someone should make like a movie about or a documentary. I guarantee there's no way European teams thought you were going to win this event. What do you think?
Yeah, back then it was crazy because the tournaments, like nowadays we have a lot of open qualifiers and stuff like this, but nowadays you just travel to tournaments and there's like 128 teams playing the same tournament and you have to win like every.
Oh, did you have to go through BYOC thing to the open qualifiers thing, right?
Yeah, I think we almost lost to the SOA, like this. The
Danish guys,
the Danish guys. Yeah, we almost lost at the first round. It was like OT or something. I remember it was on Dustio. It was like the hardest game of the tournament for us.
Right.
Yeah, and. Yeah, it was probably the craziest, the biggest. It's one of the best tournaments of my life because I played very good at this tournament. Everyone played amazing this tournament, but we lost. We beat a lot of good teams. As you said, we beat Rocket. They are like back then maybe top 5.
They were really good.
Emulate. They just won.
They were the hottest team in the world.
Yeah, the best in the world at this point. And then you meet SK in the final, which was like Spawn and all those guys. I remember playing this final, and there was like at DreamHack, there was like a lot of people behind. Like there was like this stage, but it was like a metal.
Oh, right.
I don't know how to. They are like jumping on this, and there was a lot of noise.
All right.
Yeah, it was a crazy tournament.
Oh, so it was like the sound, if people know at football games, if someone's at the back, they make that sound like... I just like that. People were like really rowdy, right? Okay.
Yeah, but...
This sounds cool, though. It sounds like a cool atmosphere to play in, though.
Yeah, but as I said, just like every tournament we won before, we didn't expect to win because we're like getting this round on Prexy. I think.
Oh, same again. You were getting wrecked in scrims, right? Okay.
Yeah, it was the same. If you ask every player from my team, we're like, okay, we're losing every single Prexy. Especially against the Sweden's SK. I remember like Fnatic, Big Rip back then as well. There was a lot of Swedish teams.
Definitely.
We are losing every Pexi, then you started playing the tournament and you win 16-14 the first round against the Danish guys, and then you play against the first best team in Finland, you play Rocket and you win, and then like the confidence is like this.
Right.
You're like at some point you're like the confidence is so high that it doesn't matter who you play, you're just on the flow of the tournament.
The next year was one of those ones where there was the GameGunes with the smaller up. But I remember when you won this GameGune in 2008, the key thing here was, first of all, this was still the same era where it's like people like BTT and then all the rest of them are still playing in CGS. But this was the one where in the final you beat Mouse Spots. And if people don't remember, that was the Mouse Spots that had won the IEM major. That was like one of the fucking, again, might be like the best team in the world. Like this must be a big win to get, like a meaningful victory, right?
Which tournament was this?
GameGune 2008.
Oh yeah, that's true. This was another example of tournaments. Before this tournament, we stayed in Madrid for a bootcamp. It was like probably the first time we bootcamp outside of Sweden.
Right.
And I remember we rent a cyber cafe to practice and stuff like this, and I think we stayed like 20 days without playing CS because it was like 200 ping.
Oh, the internet was bad, right?
Yeah, the internet was bad. It was like I think FalleN we had like our own space. We had our own room.
It was like a separate room that you can practice in, right?
Yeah. It was already a very good structure for us because we had sponsored by FalleN. I think the only teams that had room in FalleN was the MIBR and the SK. maybe NIP at some point, which was like kind of the same team at some point, I think. Yeah. But yeah, we used it to we went to this cyber cafe in Madrid, and we stayed there like, okay, we're going every day to the cyber cafe to start to practice, but we cannot practice. And we went to GameGune. I think this time was a little bit weaker, right?
It was weaker,
yeah. Sure. Even though we beat Mousesports in the final, there was I think we beat A Gaming, which was like Sterix, and I think even Blade was there.
Yeah.
But yeah, besides Mousesports, I don't think we beat like very good teams. But it was still like,
to beat Mousesports in LAN final still legitimate. Yeah. Like, that's some really good players in that team. They're a mega team, right?
Yeah, it was still very good.
By the way, what is there some weird phenomenon going on here? Normally, it's the other way around. If anything, people say, oh, we were dominated in scrims, we should have won the tournament, and then they get knocked out early, It's very rare I've ever heard stories where people really are getting destroyed in scrims and then they win the tournament. Sounds like it happened to you guys every time. Like, is there something different about the mentality? Like you say, is it just you have to get into the game and then people get more confident? I mean, one aspect I could ask is, does that mean the way you guys scrim is different to other teams? I mean, some teams do play to, like, win the scrim, whereas I always think, like, professional sports mentality should be more like, you're practicing something. It's not about if you win the scrim, right? What would you say? Was there some special reason why you guys had this opposite phenomenon?
I think it was a mix of everything, I think we are trying to practice to try stuff and not to win. And I think there was also like, people are playing home. Like, we are kind of the only team playing outside of his own house, because we had to travel from Brazil to Sweden to practice, and then we stay in the hotel and go to the LAN center, while like people are like just wake up and going to his room and playing on his home.
Oh, it's like the joke that Nico made in the online. They have their favorite Coca-Cola in their chair. It's all it's like that. They're better for that reason, right? I see.
Yeah,
makes sense.
That's a place to play every day for your whole life, And there's this. I think this is also a reason why people are more comfy, playing on his own house. But I don't know the reason, to be honest. But I think this maybe put us a little bit more scary on the tournament, and then you're like more careful and stuff like this, and maybe as soon as you started making some rounds and stuff like this, you get confidence and you're like playing the right way, but with confidence.
Because then what happens is, what's strange about the end of 1.6 for you is you get into this weird scenario where, how I said when the team won ESWC, you were then replacing Kiko, but it was the same squad. What's weird is later on, you essentially have MIBR again, but this time it's just, instead of Kogu, it's FalleN now, and FalleN just plays Kogu's roles. If people don't remember, like, FalleN, when he was on the way up, was another person in that mix of, like, there's like Thorin, there's a few different people who were supposed to be like the next AWPers, and by the way, because of Kogu, loads of people wanted to be AWPers, obviously, back then. It makes sense. The same as if you have a striker from your country, every kid's going to want to be a striker, right? When you made this squad, obviously people now will think of FalleN as like, he is the godfather, he is the elder figure, he's the big, but back then he was the young guy in this squad, right? He was the up and comer, he was the one just playing off skill and stuff. Who was the young FalleN? What was he like?
Just talking about one thing, I think back then, because we had no background and we had like a very good results, like winning Dreamhack, winning SWC, like the standards for the team was so high that we could not keep the same lineup for we also had no contracts,
Right.
And this was like a very good, very bad problem for the team, because every time we lose, we want to change, sometimes we want to remove Kogu, sometimes they remove me, sometimes we remove FNX because he lost a flight, and then we like, the standards are so high and we had no background and no contract and stuff like this, that every time we lose, even if you're making semis, like making semis was like bad,
right?
Like we're making top 4 in the tournament, and then okay, this is not enough, we didn't win, so someone has to be cut, It was very hard to maintain one team, and that's why we had like so many different lineups between. Of course, there was this CGS thing that happened 2 times, so it was like that. Besides the CGS thing that kind of forced us to change, the others change was like because we wanted to change, because we didn't match the expectations, So it was very bad for us to keep changing the lineup every time. But talking about FalleN, I think FalleN kind of started playing with us back to 2009. I think it was when we left MIBR to create our own team. I think it was FireGamers or something.
As far as I remember, didn't it start as FireGamers, then it was Complexity, and then it was like Mandic or whatever. It was the same core players, just different orgs, right?
Yeah. I think everyone got kicked from IBR. I think
wasn't it? By the way, wasn't it just essentially like, as far as I remember from the drama, wasn't it something like it was like either Kogu gets kicked or we get kicked or something? Yeah. It was like, and then he got to stay because look, I don't blame the owner. If you have Kogu, it's hard to kick like Simple or fucking Ziwu. You're going to keep that player on. Everyone understands it's human nature, but it means everyone got kicked from the team, right?
Yeah, I think I'm not quite sure.
Or they left, one of the two, right?
Yeah, I think the only one that decided to stay was NEC, and they created this weird lineup.
It wasn't a very good one, if people remember.
Yeah, it was Kiko as a coach, and then Kogu, and then
I think it was people like Spacker and stuff like that. It was some like
Spacker was there,
names, right?
Yeah. And I think Kiko was the coach, and then he kicked FNX to come back to play again. Okay. Yeah, and we're like, what's going on? No, like let's create our own team. I think they played just one tournament. I think it was IM and stuff like this, and NEC decided to leave as well,
right?
Because he didn't want to play with this new lineup, these new upcoming players. Spaka was kind of like a young player in Brazil at this point. And then we created FireGamers, and of course, because we didn't have Kogu, I think at some point I was the Alper.
Oh wow! Right, okay. Were you good Alper?
Yeah. I think it lasted like maybe 2 weeks or something.
I think that's a good answer itself.
I was always a good Alper, but I was not good enough to be like the main Alper.
Sure.
Yeah. And that's why they decided for me to be the Alper at this point, because we left MIBR, Kogu was there, and Tom was not playing anymore because we maybe a year ago we built a team with Kogu and Tom on the same team, but he stopped playing, and so I started Alpin, and then we decided no, we need a real Alper, we need someone, and we had no choice in Brazil. So it was only Kogu playing. We started to searching for Alper, and the only two options we had was Maluki back then and FalleN. Which I'll be honest, we didn't know nothing about FalleN. We knew FalleN because he was playing for Crashers, but he was like every time we play Crashers we're like 16-1, 16, maybe 60-10, but there was no game, And so we have to pick one young player. Maybe we're gonna be lucky enough to pick a guy that's gonna be playing with around 4 guys, and he's gonna have a huge dedication and maybe become a good player one day. And Maluki was living in Goiânia, which is very far from São Paulo.
Right.
And FalleN was like living in a very close city from São Paulo, like 100 kilometers or something. So we kind of went to.
By the way, guys, I hope everyone listening understands that's how big Brazil is, that he thinks 100 kilometers is close.
Yeah, because
that's how big it is. Yeah, sure.
We had no sponsor back then. Pay for travels for Maluki. We cannot plane for Maluki. If there's a tournament in São Paulo, we cannot pay for him to come to São Paulo. So it was between him and Maluki, and let's go for FalleN. Maybe he's gonna put a lot of hours in the game, and he's gonna become good. I remember when he joined, FNX was like very stressed with FalleN because he was like talking a lot of stuff. And, at some point, FNX was like, "Oh, shut up, FalleN! Stop saying." I think FalleN was like, "Calm down, let's play slow." And FNX, "Cause fuck you, calm down, just play, man," and stuff like this, Yeah, but it was. I think FalleN back then was probably. The closest one at the level of Kogo in terms of dedication. No, he was like at some point he was like 5,000 kills on deathmatch and stuff like this per day. He was like watching like 20 demos a day and stuff like this, and yeah, and then in maybe a month or 2 months or something, just like he was kind of like a sponge, you know. He was like playing with 4 good players, and he was like putting so many hours in the game, and he was like learning so fast. It was crazy how, because I've been playing for so long, and there's like players that they learn as there's like this kind of like a difference stage of learning, you know, like some people learn more slow, some people learn more fast and stuff like this. But FalleN was like in a month or something, he was like already insane. He was like making huge glitches and stuff like this. And yeah, that's probably the reason why FalleN joined the team. It was probably because he was living near our city. It was crazy.
One thing that people might not remember is, I'll jog everyone's memory, in CS 1.6, obviously one of the main majors was the World Cyber Games, right? And people probably do remember the European version where they had a Samsung European Championship, which was like, you can imagine, Europeans were really good. There was also one, if people don't know, for the Americas, it was called Pan America. And your team is like probably the greatest team ever at winning this tournament, mate. Like every time you went there, so you think about it, yeah, it's mainly the North American team, obviously, that you play like a Complexity or 3D or something back in the day. And then you'll have like, you know, a team from Mexico, a team from whatever, I don't know, pick a team, Argentina or something. Like, it's mainly about beating the Americans. But bear in mind, the Americans, by the way, always had more money or more famous. You guys won almost every single one of these. It doesn't matter what lineup you took, you just won every time, right? You always won the little gold medal.
Yeah, I think maybe in 2016 there was a lot of rivalry between Brazil and US when we had like 3D and stuff like this. But I think as soon as like maybe 2007, there was no competition, I think. Because, yeah, 2007 we played in Cancun, and for some reason there was no American team at the Pan American tournament. But 2008 we had like EG, like there was a lot of American teams in CGS.
Yes.
And then I think pretty much CS in US, like 1.6, right? Because a lot of players was like the best players in US was playing Source.
Yes.
So yeah, I think we just took advantage of this because a lot of players from the US was playing Source, and yeah, I think US had a good team back when they had Lurpes and Fraud was coming back to CS 1.6 and stuff like this. But besides this, I think we won every single Pan American tournaments quite convincingly, quite easy. I think there was also this tournament where I think I did an interview after the tournament which we won, and I was like, we won this tournament, but yeah, there was no good teams in this tournament, and yeah, I think the US players was like very mad on me because I was talking about this, but it was no bad manner, you know. But for the standards of MIBR, if you win a tournament like this in America, it was nothing changed. As I said, if you don't win the World Championship as a MIBR, you're not doing anything good, you know. Like top 4 is not enough. And yeah, I remember I did an interview after this tournament. Yeah, US player was very mad on me after this. I don't remember. It was maybe there was a lot of websites back then, but
sure. Yeah, by the way, one thing I wanted to ask you about was not only at CGS, but people will remember, like, obviously very famously, FalleN himself went to Source as well. He even did that famous interview, which just haunted him forever now, where he was like, it's more tactical. And actually, that was like his version of your interview. You just said there, every 1.6 fan was like, what the hell? He's betrayed us. He like Source more or whatever. But actually, back then, it's because, like, obviously there wasn't much money in 1.6 and all the tournaments were dying out, and a bunch of players went to Source. I noticed you never did. You played the odd online cop, but aside from that, you played 1.6 the whole time till the very end. What, you weren't interested in Source in the same way, or you just wanted to stay on 1.6? What was the scenario?
I think I played a couple of tournaments in Source.
Yeah, but just the odd one, right? Yeah.
I don't know. I think at some point we kind of lost every opportunity in Brazil in 1.6, so we kind of had to like mix, because in Brazil we had the MIBR, and then Paulo, I think at some points he was already gone at this point.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. And on Source, there was this guy called Lippy, which was the owner of Target Down, the TD team.
Right.
And
this is the one FalleN joined,
yeah. And he had like this. He had a lot of money to invest on his team, and yeah, he had like kind of the same dream as Paulo had with MIBR. He had on Target Down, but on Source, So, and yeah, it was more like, okay, we need some opportunities to play, and the Source was there. So yeah, FalleN was the first one, maybe. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, I also joined TD. It was at some point we had like this crazy TD lineup, which was a Source team. Was like FalleN, me, ZKK, FNX, and Erkize or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we kind of built like this the Brazilian dream team on Source, but it lasted maybe 2 months or something. I played maybe 8 tournaments, which I won everyone in Brazil, but yeah. And then at some point, I think like they kind of like join force with complexity. It was like crazy stuff. Like people are playing CS.6 and CS Source at the same time. Yeah, it was mainly because we don't have opportunities to keep playing 1.6, and we had to play Source at the same time. But it's not like it was a bad game. It was fun to play both games, but yeah.
When CS...
It was more like we have to play, then we want to play,
Right. When CSGO came out, a lot of people will know, actually for the first few years, no one really remembers Brazil being relevant, because actually it wasn't until like Kaboom and FalleN and Thorin, those guys came along in 2015. The first couple of years, no one remembers. So I had to look this up, but I did this for a different interview, so I already knew this, which is in early CSGO, there was a lineup you played in of PlayArt, where this is the roster. The roster was BIT, I think it was FNX, FalleN, and KNG. By the way, this is way before KNG was even famous. Like, this already looks like it could have been a good roster already. Like, why didn't this lineup become famous or do something famous? Why was it just around at the time? This looks amazing, this lineup, mate.
Yeah, at the end of 1.6, we built this team to be like the 5-star players in Brazil. Like I think Neck stopped playing, so me and FalleN was still living the dream. We're like the only 2 guys like making the things work in Brazil. FalleN had a lot of projects, of course, but yeah, in terms of like wanting to keep competing for big titles in Brazil, I was still there, And so yeah, we created this lineup: me, FalleN, Fer, Kenji, and FNX, which was crazy back then. But there was no opportunity in CSGO in Brazil when they released the game. It was like we're like practicing every day, but there's no tournament to play. It was mainly ourselves making like show match with low prize money to keep the game alive, and we're trying to make something for us to play. We had to build our own tournaments to play. And yeah, at some point, I started playing League of Legends, and I had some opportunities to play there, and I even became pro of League of Legends at some point. And yeah, that's when also FalleN started to play a lot of games at the same time. They started playing CSGO, CS.6, Crossfire, and yeah, everything they could play. We even played Assault Fire together on WCG. Yeah, it was like we're playing whatever we can play, because that's the only way we can keep living by playing games,
By the way, let me ask about some of these players, because if people don't know, it wasn't just in this lineup. Actually, first of all, you played many, many years in CSGO. Probably people don't know that. You only became the coach the last few years. So not only were you playing, because, I mean, actually, that's kind of cool if you think about the beginning of the interview, because esports got so big, you can either be in a smaller team and make a salary and have a professional career still and keep doing it. That's kind of cool in itself. But obviously, early on, you actually got to play with some of the players that now are very famous. Like, if people don't know, it took years and years before KNG finally got into the big teams. But you were playing with him for most of early CSGO. So what was KNG like back then? Was he a similar player to the one we think of now?
Yeah, KNG was, to be honest, we all hated KNG. And even Neck back then, yeah, because at some point there was like the two biggest teams in Brazil was like Mandic, FireGamers, Complexity, whatever. We had a lot of different names at this point in the end of 1.6, right? And KG was like the rival of this team. He was like he was always like the way he is nowadays. He was the same. He was like a lot of trash talk, you know, and we're like the stars of Brazil, and why is this guy talking shit about us? You know, he was like, and yeah, everyone for our team hated Kenji, especially Naki. I remember Naki. Oh, this guy is never gonna play in my team and stuff like this. But you know, as soon as you need someone very good, you know, like Kenji was like the best player in Brazil at some point. I would say
he was very skilled, wasn't he?
Yeah. I think he and FalleN was probably the best players in Brazil at the end of 1.6. And you know, yeah, we need one guy, and yeah, even though we don't like this guy, maybe, you know, it was more like we never met this guy, we never even talked to we don't like him, but we never talked to this guy before. But as soon as he joined the team, he was like very nice guy. He was like get along with everybody very fast. He's very friendly. Of course, he's very different from everybody, but yeah, we all love it. KNG as soon as he on the first day he joined our team. But yeah, he was very, very good. He was like very good with rifle. He was very good with help. He was like he could do. Like he was kind of like a Kogo, you know. He not as good as Kogo, but he was good if everything, you know. He had like the whole package as a player. Yeah, even though we didn't want to bring him, we kind of need to have this guy on the team because he was the best. And our team, there was only the best players in Brazil in our team, you know. And if he was good enough to play with us, yeah, we don't care about like friendship and stuff like this, you know. Even though a lot of people say in Brazil we only play with ourselves, you know, because I don't know how to say, like people in Brazil say we had this in Brazil we call panela, you know. There was only like this mix of like 8 players and they just play between each other, you know. And it was hard to join like from the outside, you know. So yeah, KNG was not one of those guys, but he was that good that okay, we need this guy, you know?
I mean, maybe along similar lines then, the other player I did want to ask about from this era was obviously Fur, because if people remember when that Kaboom team came along, that was before Cold Zero ever joined. Like, Fur was the star of that team, mate. I remember the second I even saw this player, like, you know the thing in English, we call it the eye test, like when you see a player, you can just tell they go, it's just obvious this player's really skilled. Like, I mean, you even see his style, he's just got a crazy style, he's a really confident player. Who is Fur?
Yeah, I to be honest, I didn't play too much with Fur because yeah, when he he was like he played a tournament in Brazil, which was on LAN. I think it was like a Servus Cup. It was like one of the only tournaments left in Brazil back then. It was like a LAN tournament, and I think he was like 3rd place, and he played very well, and that's when he appeared for us, you know. That's when this guy is very good. Maybe if we need a player, we can pick him up. To be honest, I don't remember too much stuff about Fer. I know a lot of stories about Fer because he say a lot of stuff on stream, you know. He say
it's funny, a lot of people don't know this bit because he doesn't do English interviews. People think he's like quiet. In Brazilian scene, he's saying everything crazy on stream. Yeah, he's wild.
Yeah, he says everything. He doesn't care if he like
everything gossip, drama, everything I've heard. Yeah.
I heard a lot of stories of him saying that we asked him to join and he didn't want to join because he wanted to beat us, and then he beat us.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure if this is true.
Sounds like a cool story, but yeah, who knows?
Yeah, but he said that he refused our team, and then he beat our team, and then he said, okay, I can join now because I beat them, you know. I don't remember, to be honest, but yeah, to be honest, I don't remember too much about Fer because I played with him like a very maybe 3 matches. Yeah.
What about then? I won't ask much, obviously, because people watching this interview care about Counter-Strike, but I want to ask a couple of questions about when you did go to League of Legends, like you say, because we're not saying like you just played League of Legends for fun. You actually were a pro player in CBLoL, if people don't know, like when that was first coming around, the earliest teams. And if people don't know, Kaboom was the first famous team, because obviously after you, they went and beat the Alliance team, if you remember, at Worlds. So this was like the real squad. People don't know, this is the squad with like tinowns and Lep and all those players that you know if you're a League of Legends fan, right? I do notice, Bit, when I looked it up, I could already have guessed this before I opened the page, mate. You were an in-game leader in Counter-Strike. I already knew there's only two roles he's going to be. It's either going to be jungler or support, because it has to be the roles where you can talk and think about the game, right? And I noticed you were a jungler. You were the least in the least player. So is it a similar logic to what I'm saying? Like, I feel like for in-game leaders, these are the roles that make sense in League of Legends, right?
To be honest, back then I was mid laner because I never had like I never wanted to become a League of Legends pro player.
Okay.
You know? I used it to play a lot of games back then. I used it to compete on Day of Defeat. I used it to compete on Team Fortress. I used it to compete on Dota, Heroes of New Earth. I used it to play a lot of games just for fun, you know. And on League of Legends, I was mid laner, but at some point I started to play more tournaments, and I was like, okay, there's a lot of very good mid lanes in Brazil, so I have no opportunity in mid lane. Okay, I'm just gonna see whatever I have more opportunities, and I'm just gonna try, you know, to play at least for fun on a good team. And yeah, I think mid laner they had like Kemi, Takeshi, a lot of players in Brazil, and okay, there's no chance I join a good team in mid lane, and I saw a good opportunity as a jungler, you know. And that's why I became jungler, just because, you know, I saw this as an opportunity to join a good team. But League of Legends, I was just playing for fun, just any other games, playing some tournaments with friends and stuff like this. But I remember at some point I got challenger in Brazil, and I was like duo killing with BRTT sometimes.
Oh, right, okay. Because he's like one of the best players at the time,
yeah, because I was already famous in Brazil. You know,
did they already know you from Counter-Strike, right?
They knew me from Counter-Strike, so it was very easy to get in contact with him. Yeah, back then BRTT was also a Counter-Strike player. A few years ago. Yeah, and so it was easy for me to like have like contact with the other players, you know. And so I started playing, and then I had this opportunity to play CBLoL because one player from Next Impetus didn't want to play, or like he was kicked maybe 2 days before the tournament or something like this for CBLoL. And I joined, and they expect us to be last place, and we make the semifinals against CNB and stuff like this. And then it was like very quick, you know. It's like I played League of Legends as a pro for like 7 months or something. It was very quickly. And then I see that I don't want to keep playing. It was like I was not good enough, first of all. I was good. Maybe I could become good at some point, but yeah, I was not very good. But, you know, I had the tools to be good enough at that time to become a CBLoL player, because, you know, I've been through competition stuff for so many years, so I know how to practice. I know how to do.
To be a professional, right? Play on stage and stuff, right? I see what you mean, right?
Oh, it was enough for me to be good enough to become pro. But yeah, then I didn't want to play anymore, and Kaboom offered me to become a GM for their org. You know, I could do whatever, you know, because I kind of started the org, you know, because they had no team in Kaboom, and I offered my team because I had sponsor for Kaboom, as individual. Yeah, I offered my team, they accepted and stuff like this. I had good relation with them, and yeah, I stopped playing. I became GM of the team, and then we hired some good players in Brazil, and we became CBLoL champions. We went to Worlds and stuff like this. But yeah, it was fun times. But yeah, I don't miss them, to be honest. It was
I do want to ask just about that one player, though, because if people don't know the mid laner that you played with, tinowns, not only does he still play today, he is probably, aside from BRTT maybe, he's probably the most famous Brazilian player ever, if people don't know, like, and Tokas, I'll give him credit too. But, like, if people know the scene of League of Legends, this guy has been in 1 million CBLoL finals, he's had a very long career. Was he actually someone back then, could you see he was a talent?
Yeah, he was very crazy back then. Like, when I played with him, he was like maybe 15 or something, 16 maybe.
Right, okay.
Was like this very quiet guy. He didn't say a single word in the practice. He didn't say a single word outside of the PC. But yeah, he was very crazy player, insane. Like he was like individually insane, you know. And yeah, he's still very good. Sometimes I still talk with him. Maybe not that often, but yeah, sometimes I message him and he messaged me. But yeah, he was a very good friend of mine, and yeah, he was probably the main reason I got drawn in I got CBLoL champion and I got in the semi of the CBLoL and stuff like this, because yeah, he carried me so much. He was already a very good player.
They say no man is an island. We all need people who've got our back. And supporting me and the content on my channel are the following people: Matt Pugnaccio Racula, The Concept, Animosity, Bane Diesel, Ben Glass, Jason, Jensen Gore, Tosh, Toucan, and you know it. Always a special thanks goes up to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Do you want to ask a question for my video AMA? Do you want to take part in one of those lengthy discussions where I talk about whatever topics are on your mind? Do you want teasers, find out who the upcoming guests are, or maybe even to suggest a guest or a topic for my content? If any of those perks or others catch your fancy, well, put your money where your mouth is and join the Skrilluminati today, where? In the Patreon link in the description box below.